And we're on. Here we are on the first full edition of the BORDERPOL Journal for the fall of 2024.
Yes, 27th of September. I see that you have also decided to go outdoors virtually.
Virtually, yes. And I thought, you know, I live in such a nice part of the world that I just throw a little picture to make people envious.
Yes. Well, I too live by the water, as you know, and this is our little beach, which is I took this picture actually 2 days ago. It's reminiscent of when all the tourists are gone. As you can see, there's nobody on the beach.
Oh yes, it is fall in your neck of the woods too, then.
It is. It is. So, you know, until the snow flies, this will be my background from here. Then maybe I'll go out there and take one of those blizzard pictures and keep our viewers amused with that.
That's in your neck of the woods. That's just like a white canvas, right? You just take a picture of that and you got it.
Yeah, it would work too. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Well, anyway, for those of you that don't know, this is the beautiful little city of Sauceri White Rock with our pier, which has been designated. I don't know which organization did it, but it is the longest pier in Canada. So that's our claim to fame.
Is that where you take a long walk off a short pier, or?
We take a short walk off a long pier because you can't reach the end of it. Although it does bring to mind the political cartoon that I saw the other day about our illustrious leader sitting inside the Canada plane. And his bubble above his head said, "Oh, I love airplane rides. Where are we going to now?" And the pilot says, "Well, we're going to Antarctica because it's got snow 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, just in case you want to take a walk like your old man."
It's clearly sarcasm dripping there from that cartoonist's.
Yes, it just was almost way too ironic, but.
Well, it's been a busy week internationally and nationally. Internationally, the bad news just keeps piling up. So I'm not sure what we can say there, other than the warmongers need to cool their jets. But
well, yeah, they certainly do. Right? I think we've reached the point where whether somebody blinks or doesn't blink, there's going to be an accident. And that does not bode well in any stretch of the imagination at all.
No.
And I don't know who's going to do it first or how it's going to happen, but unless you start to step away from that line in the sand, we're down a slippery slope.
Well, you know, one of the things that is difficult to talk about these days is this whole notion of, well, are we permitted to be critical of the world around us? And you know, if you challenge the conventional narrative, it seems to be coming out of the mouths of these dimwits who seem to think that they'll survive a nuclear war and everybody else will be gone, which is okay. And you know, that's basically how I see their narrow vision. But if you question any of their narrative, now they're starting to decide, well, maybe that should be outlawed.
Mm-hmm.
In Canada, this bill C-63 is an absolute abomination, where everything from questioning what happened on the Indigenous lands all those years ago about, you know, the missing kids, which we still haven't found. Don't criticize that, because you could be charged with, you know, inciting something or whole information thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Or if you question foreign policy, then you must be an agent of some country. Meanwhile, there are agents of some countries operating here that they don't want to tell you who they're talking with, because that could be embarrassing.
Well, there's that, yeah. But I guess the question that came to my mind is why do we need to have legislation to fix something? Yeah, we will legislate that you have to wear a helmet when you ride a bike now. We're going to legislate that you have to have a seatbelt. We're going to legislate. It just seems to me that we put in laws, or we put in things to I don't know, make things better, or make ourselves feel better. And with this whole new proposed bill by the NDP woman from BC here to talk about the residential school, and you can't say it's it didn't happen, or couldn't happen, or whatever it is that they want to legislate. Do we actually have legislation in Canada that deals with the Holocaust? Right? I mean, it's the same kind of thing. But if we don't have a law for that, why do we need one for Indigenous people? It's a strange situation.
Well, what's even stranger is we give them the oxygen to promote some of this nonsense. I mean,
Yeah.
the other day that woman who is the party leader of the Greens in Canada, her and her partner MP, that's a party of two, are going on and on about what should and should not be considered parliamentarian. Well, excuse me, but you don't represent a party in the sense of two people out of 338. Please, you're entitled to your opinion, but you're getting way too much airtime for your self-important nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the problem, is that this fear of challenging someone. What will be the result? Well, if we start going down that road, we're going to regret it, because at some point, people will find themselves incarcerated for something they should never have even.
Yeah, well, there was pre-production. You had that now, where we've got the Hamas people wandering into Jewish neighborhoods. We now have these kinds of situations where you can't speak out against the government. I know we're coming up on the 100th anniversary of the 1930s in a place called Germany, where they had people running around in brown shirts, or and put people at fear. I don't want to think that we're going there, or that we are headed that direction, but boy, oh boy, sure feels like it at times.
Well, if we're to believe some of the news that is breaking just before we went on the air today, or before we started this podcast, we got breaking news, the old breaking news alert. But this one is from the Bureau, which is out of Ottawa. A guy by the name of Sam Cooper. It says that new evidence suggests Trudeau's staff shielded him from Chinese election interference reports. Now, if this is going to be falling into Bill C-63, he'd go to jail. Yeah. Because they, and let me just read you the first paragraph of this. Literally just came in before we started our podcast. This is Ottawa, the tag in. A growing body of evidence at the Hague Commission is painting a damaging picture for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's administration, suggesting that senior officials may not only have influenced changes to intelligence reports regarding Trudeau's party members, but also shielded Canada's leader from sensitive intelligence on Chinese election interference, and may have delayed CSIS investigations into an influential Liberal Party member. What do you think of that? I mean, this is unbelievable. And this comes on top of testimony. The report goes on to say that they may have drafted documents to provide cover for the government's alleged inaction, which is exposed in Canadian media reports. His testimony on Friday from former CSIS Director David Vigneault revealed that he was, and quote, very surprised, unquote, to learn that a crucial intelligence paper detailing Chinese foreign interference efforts was never shared with Prime Minister Trudeau. Vigneault testified that the, quote, targeting paper, unquote, which summarized PRC influence activities which targeting parliamentarians, was allegedly withheld by then National Security Intelligence Advisor Jody Thomas.
Well, I guess the only positive thing on that is that you should be able to leave Canada and go and claim status, asylum status somewhere else. If these things come to roost, where would you like to go, Tom, if that's the case? We're just putting it out there, just not that we're going to get on an airplane and go there, but it kind of puts this whole thing into perspective of, what we started out with BORDERPOL a long time ago with migration and the issues it was having and how people were flooding to the West. And now I kind of wonder, I understand what people are afraid of in those countries and why they want to move. And they've been planning for years where they want to go to. Maybe it's time that we did the same thing if we get this kind of thing. Out here in BC, we've got an election coming up in 3 weeks to form the provincial government. We've got a current government out here now that, as I've said in broadcast before, is telling us how many homes we can have on our city lots, what kind of homes you can build that will be built quicker because there won't be the red tape. They've told us which police forces certain municipalities can have and can't have, which really, really smacks to me of being a dictatorship.
Certainly authoritarian.
Very authoritarian. And if they want to be reelected, is that because they think they can do better things, or is that because they haven't finished telling us what they want to do to us yet? Should we be thinking of moving somewhere else? I guess that's the question. But
well, with the election in the States, you continually see on X that these Hollywood types say that if Trump gets elected, they're all going to move. Of course, they've been saying that for 10 years, never seen him move.
Yeah.
That's kind of the other side of the coin where, okay, they don't understand what authoritarianism really is. They're making up stories. In this country, we are the petri dish for authoritarian rule. Ask those truckers 2 years ago how authoritarianism works. What country in the world permits their government to freeze bank accounts on the whim of a political party who just comes up, and then they find out that, oh, by the way, that was illegal. Oh, okay, and then they just forgotten. You shouldn't have done that. Yeah, okay, fine. And they don't quit. I mean, they just keep doing it over and over again. And the real frustration I have is that there's such a large body of individuals walking around who are either dumbed down to the point where they don't get the message, or they don't care, or whatever. And when it happens, it'll be too late. You brought up in pre-production, this is like living in the 30s again. Well, there was a sort of a saying that when it came from my neighbor, I didn't care because it was my neighbor, but when they came for me, I suddenly started to care, but it was too late.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think we're at. We better start worrying about, how our neighbors and friends are being treated, or even people in the press who open their mouths, particularly outside of the so-called legacy media, because I don't hear a lot of squawking from the people who are getting paid by this government of Canada to subsidize their activities. I mean, look what happened with CTV News.
Well, yeah, they've disassociated themselves from the reporters, but they haven't apologized for it. they didn't say, did they fire those people or did they just move them to a different department called maybe propaganda?
That's right.
Uh,
Yeah, we'll perfect. Yeah, and you know, it's always been a craw in my thing with the whole subsidy issues. Why would the government give a multi-billion-dollar corporation a subsidy? Like, what does that? The parent company of CTV News doesn't need the money. Okay. So why would they take the money? And by the way, when you take someone's money, no one gives you something for nothing. Okay. This is the total fallacy of the whole thing. It's just common sense. I give you something because it's not Christmas presents. We're talking about a subsidy, and they would expect, like any other business, to be rewarded for their largesse. And how that happens is clearly, in the case of the CTV debacle, they got caught, literally got caught. To have this, the progressives suddenly say, well, that's not a big deal. It was just an error in editing. Well, now imagine if the shoe was on the other foot. Okay, I mean, look how they lost their minds over a snide comment made by an MP about the Prime Minister and the President of France, you know, in a bathtub. You know, I mean, come on. What is this? Oh, sorry, not President. Tom Kent, the guy who was the Consul General in New York.
Yeah.
Okay, now all of a sudden they've blown that up into, oh my God, this is all about you know, identifying some group who, and this is disgusting. And well, that's interesting. So that gets your nose out of joint. But when it's in your favor, who cares?
Yeah.
Especially when it's evident that it's a payoff. You know, a stupid comment in the House of Commons is not the same as, you know, $500 million in subsidies to the legacy media.
True.
I mean, please.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and again, the other thing that's just kind of catching up with us right now is the former Bank of Canada governor and the former Bank of England governor, Mr. Carney, who has been brought on as a consultant, I guess, to the Prime Minister here. I don't know what his title is. I don't know how much he's making. But he works for, what is it, Brookfield or something,
Yeah.
which likes to take money and invest it for people. But they now want to get their hands on the Canada Pension Plan, which how many decades ago was put into the pot that it's in so that governments couldn't get their hands onto it.
It's not their money.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a private fund. Okay, it was purposely made that way. This is why when you compare the Canada Pension Plan and its liquidity compared to the American Social Security program, which has got no liquidity, it's just numbers on a piece of paper, because there is no, that's funded entirely by borrowing money, and the government approving the money to be borrowed to pay to seniors. That's a hell of a difference between the CPP program and the Social Security program. But these delinquents in Ottawa would like to lay their hands on this money, and they lie about how wonderful Canada's balance of payments is, because they use the money that's in the fund, which is many billions of dollars, as their money. Excuse me, it's not your money. You can't use that. You know, that's like saying, I mean, my house is worth so much because, you know, my neighbor's house is included in that price appraisal. It's not my house to, you know, it's not mine. And this is what these guys, they're a shameless bunch, honest to goodness.
Well, I guess that gets down to a point of Western politics. To see the mayor of New York City's now up on indictment charges, and
that's surprising. Not that he's been indicted. It's surprising that they've gone after their own prodigies there. I mean, this guy is, you know, is a serious big time Democrat. Like, why all of a sudden are they getting the nerve to do this? It seems peculiar.
It is strange, and as I say,
It's a good move. If the guy's a crook, he's a crook.
yeah.
But
I don't know. It makes me wonder where we in the West, if you compare where we are right now with the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, which lasted a lot longer than what this empire has, would we be very, very close to the bottom of the bell curve? Are we looking for something like, and I guess, and it goes back to migration as well. Like, why would anybody want to come here? We're finding perhaps a bad taste in our mouth with all this stuff. I can't figure out why other people would want to come here as well.
Well, look, it's a question of are you, or look, if I was in Ukraine, I'd get the hell out of there too. If I was in Gaza, I'd get the hell out of there. That just, I'm not in a big hurry to meet my maker or take my family with me to meet all those. That I understand. And whether you're for or against, I understand. If those people really are refugees.
True. Yeah.
We become very cynical about who's a refugee, because we have managed to allow certain segments of our political elite to destroy the meaning of refugees and asylum seekers. And
well, that's very evident too, isn't it? What do they got now? What do they say? 18,000 refugee claims coming in from students whose visas are going to expire.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, at the same time, our pals in the U.S. At DHS are telling us that they've got a big rise in East Indians, or not East Indians, but East Asians trying to get into the U.S. Illegally, which means they're by hook or by crook they're getting in. And some of them are showing up at ports of entry and trying to play the same tune as they do here in Canada, and then they're discovering that no, that one doesn't fly, in spite of the fact that it's the wrong border. If you want to get into the U.S., you go through the southern border. You don't go through the northern border. I don't think they got the memo. I mean, really. But it's a bit, and our American colleagues are saying, look, that's one thing, but they're really getting kind of wound up about who are the people who are actually in Canada, that no one knows what purpose they're in Canada for.
I think both you and I have worked in the program long enough to know that if they're admitting there's 1.5 million, it's probably double that.
Oh yeah, well, for 20 years in the U.S., they talked about 11 million illegals. It never changed, never went up, never went down. That was just utter balderdash. That's an old English term,
Yes.
Balderdash. So this other nonsense that's been going on for essentially the last 4 years now. Yeah, this will not end well. But when you hear people saying things like officials that they no longer trust their own employer, whether it's the FBI or the DHS or the RCMP, we got serious trouble here, because it's one thing for us mugs on the outside to say, I've lost a lot of faith in our institutions. I've lost a lot of faith in our justice system. I've lost a lot of faith in the law enforcement community. When the folks on the inside of those institutions start telling you that they've lost a lot of faith in it, we're in very deep water here. And how the heck do we turn that into much shallower water? Obviously, it's starting to get on the nerves of some still principled and honest bureaucrats, law enforcement people, even politicians. Wait a minute, honest politician is oxymoron. I shouldn't do that.
Well, there's got to be one or two, right? There's
Now,
exceptions there.
you listen. You'd have to use a searchlight to find them, but okay, a really powerful searchlight. But
Does that mean we have to use AI to find them?
Oh, no, let's not even go there. I was watching AI produced video, which it's stunning. It shows Trudeau talking to Colbert, that ridiculous thing that went on Monday, that stupid show in New York, and the AI made it sound like he really was calling himself an idiot and a fool and whatever. And you see the lips moving, the voice is perfect because the AI can replicate a person's voice, and they have it sort of synchronized to his lips. Unbelievable. And now so you say to yourself, wow, if the dumb of the dumbest see this, oh, that guy's so self-deprecating. He's telling us he's a jerk. What a nice guy. He's finally coming. He never said that. This is AI working. Oh, and by the way, AI did not lie about how many people were at the UN listening to our illustrious leader pontificating about how wonderful life in Canada is. There were 27 people, 27, in the hall listening to him. 26 of them were probably Canadian hangers-on from the consulate in New York.
Well, I did see that too. I saw something
absolutely empty in there.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things where you can pontificate and orate and oration and whatever you want to do. And I guess that's why people go into politics. They've got egos that need to be filled. But if there's only 27 people standing there, 26 of whom are probably being paid to stand there because they were brought out of various consular sections or something, well, maybe that's a bit too much. There might have been a few journalists there, because that's apparently part of the agreements with the slush funds. But yeah, I don't know. 27 people.
Things are they were listen. Things are happening. I just got a note from Remix in an EU organization that sends us various little bits of newsletter, and Norway has now proclaimed that they can't take any more asylum seekers. Moreover, they are ending their automatic asylum for all Ukrainians. If that's not bad news for people who are trying to escape really an ugly situation, that is. So Justice Minister Mail revealed that Norway has taken in far more Ukrainian refugees compared to other Scandinavian countries, and expressed concern that the increasing number of Ukrainian refugees are men of fighting age. So they've announced they'll no longer grant automatic asylum, marking a shift in their collective protection policy that was introduced in February 2022. They will do case-by-case basis, but this disproportionate share of displaced people going to Norway. Norway's a wealthy country.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but they've taken in 85,545 Ukrainians. That's a lot of folks for a country of 5.6 million.
Yeah, it is.
So that just came across the what you used to call the flyby news that pops in here.
Yeah,
and it's happening throughout Scandinavia. I mean, the Swedish Foreign Ministry now is getting kind of down on mass immigration because Sweden and its diversity program is having real negative consequences for the society there. Sweden of all places.
wow.
They don't know. They're not a country of mass migration, but they thought that was a good idea, particularly when they were dealing with people with a totally different cultural background, a lower level of education, a totally different approach to how a society or how members within a society comport themselves. And then the part that the Swedes don't understand, and I have to go along with this, is, well, if you didn't like where you were before, okay, why are you coming here and replicating what you didn't like before? Like this is the part where the Swedes have kind of figured it out. And in Sweden, they've got a population that's exploded, where they've got almost 2 million people out of the 10 million that aren't even born in Sweden. Now that's 20%, 1/5 of the population, just suddenly are in a mix there that isn't a mix. Okay, these are not folks who want to become Swedes. They have no interest in that. They want to, and so when you have in Canada or the US, it's a big piece of property. You can spread this out. When you do it in a place like Sweden, which is the size of Southern Ontario, you can't take in 2 million people and expect them to, kind of.
No.
They can't. They don't want to assimilate. And the underworld situation in Sweden has just exploded. They've got something like 62,000 criminals locked up that aren't even Swedes. And the international structure of this is the same from one sovereign country to the next. And what's the common denominator? Most of these people don't like the people they went to live with. Okay, they have no interest in becoming part of the community they went to live with, and they're quite happy to take all the social services and all the programs to let them survive quite well, thank you very much, without being grateful to any extent at all. Like, they don't care. And then oh, Tom, you're being stereotypical. No, I'm not. I don't think I am, because I don't see this particular group having any interest in being part of the broader communities of these countries. And everyone, they competed with each other. Like, why the heck did the European Union compete with the U.S. and Canada for this group of people? Like, and now all of a sudden they're getting upset. Well, it was like what's the word I'm looking for? It was stylish. It was a fad. It was vogue. Yes. Well, how many refugees did you take? Well, they're not refugees, but we took 100,000, 20,000 more than you did. And they get to stand up in the UN or IOM or wherever and pontificate about all the wonderful things they've done at the expense of their constituents, who now have turned on them. And all of a sudden, whoops, now this isn't working out. This fad's got to go, because they're going to kick our sorry butts out of office.
I guess that would be my concern now. If Europe is a migration community is starting to shut down, as we're finding with Germany, talking about in Holland, Denmark, Switzerland. What's the next logical step for these people? It's an airline ride to some place called North America. Perhaps our friends to the south are more stringent, more strict in who gets to be a refugee or asylum claimant, who doesn't. But thanks to our illustrious leader's father, and the fact that we didn't have the wherewithal to invoke a notwithstanding clause, we've now got the issue that anybody that steps on our soil is covered by this wonderful thing called the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which leads to a point of it takes 20 years to remove somebody by the time they've exhausted all their appeals. And then, of course, we have to have the humanitarian review now, because he's married, he's got 6 kids and 14 grandchildren. So how can you remove them? It's just, I don't know. I guess the whole thrust of this is, if Europe is starting to have cold feet, we better start looking for some ice water to put in our bath, because it's going to be coming here pretty soon too.
Well, our media really doesn't focus very much on the navel gaze all the time. So the news that we're telling our listeners and viewers is probably going to be surprising to them. But perhaps if they spent a little more time going at looking at other news sources like we do, and they might get some trend line stuff. For example, we know from the government of Germany that they say they need $10 billion more in their account, their budget, than they did in 2024, rather than they predicted in 2025, because they have to cover all these migrants that don't have jobs, don't have homes, don't have prospects, have lots of kids, et cetera, et cetera. So they've discovered that mass migration is not working for us, which in the German experience to me is particularly weird, because for 30 some years, mass migration out of Turkey for them seemed to be okay while these folks, cleaned their toilets and worked on the assembly lines. But now all of a sudden, they can't afford to have someone clean their toilets. And their assembly lines, in the case of Volkswagen, the two major out of the four major plants in Germany, two of them are going to close down because they can't sell cars. So all of a sudden, these chickens are coming home to roost. So you may be right. They could be. Well, maybe that's why Macron was over here and trying to convince Trudeau. Well, I can't control this bunch that have essentially invaded France from North Africa and whatever. Maybe you could take some off my hands for me. I'm making this up, but anything is possible.
And apparently that's not working out too well here, because the people that are coming here don't really want to go to any place other than Ontario or Quebec. So now the government's coming up with a plan. Well, let's just share it proportionally across the spectrum here. We talked about this last week, and I feel sorry for the people who are going to get relocated, because they're going to become targets. They're going to become the backlash against a movement, and maybe these people are legitimate refugees, asylum claimants, but they're sure going to get painted with a bad brush the way the current government's operating, and that's for sure.
Well, as I say, this is a global problem with global implications. The one thing that the quote globalists are right about, we are all interconnected. But I think it's time for a little bit of isolationism to start happening, because we can't solve the problems of 190 other countries. This whole notion that we have to share all these burdens, no, we don't. I'm sorry. Charity begins at home. Once you've solved your problem, then you can't save everybody by throwing yourself under the bus. Maybe not a very good metaphor, but it's maybe a better one is the lifeboat one, where everybody's in the lifeboat and then it sinks because you overloaded. And that's precisely what I see happening in sort of global migration issues. And at the end of the day, whether you're talking Germany or France or the United States, and particularly the G7, has done a lousy job on immigration, refugee determination. They have been hijacked by a small group, a cabal of elites whose lifestyle is nowhere near the general public that has to deal with this issue on their streets and their schools and their hospitals. It's just pathetic how they managed to be as successful as they have for essentially a generation now. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. This just didn't happen overnight. So to turn this around is the old analogy about the super tanker. I think the super tanker is actually run out of fuel and it's dead in the water.
Yeah.
And now it's a question of, well, who's going to get on board and start getting the bunker fuel in to start turning this thing around and going in the right direction. And there is bad news all over the place. I mean, when you think about the institutions that we thought were somewhat solid, NATO is falling apart because of its own stupidity. You've got Turkey, who now is going to join the BRICS. Well, if a NATO member is joining BRICS and Turkey has the second largest army in NATO, like, what are we talking about here? Okay, and by the way, they also control the Dardanelles, the Straits going into the Black Sea, and they already told other NATO countries that they can't send ships in there to help the Ukrainians. Well, that seems to me that the Ukrainians are up the river without a paddle. So, yeah. But these institutions are failing because they've been hijacked by folks who are really only interested in themselves. And, it's all about power. And I think that we need to be optimistic, I think, rather than really pessimistic.
Yeah, that's true.
Human nature does after a while say, okay, we're done with this. We played around with it, now we're done. And that too, will pick up and get some momentum. What we have to be very careful of is that momentum doesn't become kind of a crazy, because we talk about the authoritarianism of the left. I don't want this to turn into the fascism of the right, just because we have to get an even keel here. So let's be honest. One of the things is integrity. I mean, we may not have much in the BORDERPOL Journal as a media thing, but we do have integrity. Okay, that's all we got. Soon, if we don't have integrity, we got nothing. And so to say that we're not particularly enamored with the idea of holus bolus becoming far this or far that in order to balance the ship, we have to be careful. But certainly to try and get back to what I call normal. Normal is in the middle. Normal, that's what, everybody gets a little piece. The crazies on the left and the right, ignore them because they don't have enough juice to screw things up in the middle. That's what we have to work on. Mm-hmm. And if we can do that, not just nationally but internationally, little people like us, because we're nobodies in the grand scheme of things here. But if we have enough people, nobodies like us, putting enough pressure on the.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Then there is hope. And like I say, we've got to be positive.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess to me that's the whole point, and maybe where we could. I see we're coming up almost close to the half hour now, but the gauntlet order. How about we put this out as a challenge? The U.S. is coming up for a major vote in a couple of months.
Less.
And my challenge would be to the American viewers in particular, is look around the world and see what's happened. Germany has had a backlash. They've got almost a very, very right-wing government. Britain, a couple of months ago, voted in a very almost left-wing government. And it seemed to me because it was a knee-jerk reaction. So the challenge I'm putting out to you right now is, I don't care if you're a Democrat, I don't care if you're a Republican, go out and do some research and find out who's the best candidate. If it happens to be you're a Democrat and the person that's best suited for your region is a Republican, vote for them. Like, it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't really matter what party they belong to. If they're going to do what's best for your area. Maybe that's a bit idealistic. I don't know, but I know we have to kind of do the same thing here in BC in about 3 weeks.
Well, I think that's good advice, Bob. Really. Think before you put your X or pull the handle or whatever you do in the voting system you have. But vote. Okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
And let's and when the results come out, those are the results. Don't do what has been done now in election after election, which is that can't be right.
Mhm.
Okay? And listen, there's always fraud in elections. There's no such thing as a utopian place or okay, but just be cognizant of the fact that on the 6th of November, the decision will have been made, and then you got to deal with it for the next 4 years. All of us have our own preferences, and ours it's our own personal view, and it's nobody else's business. Certainly, we don't have what do you call it, a dog in the race, because we're not Americans.
Mhm.
But the impact on us here from decisions that are made by our cousins to the south is perceptible. So, but we're not going to tell you how to vote. We're just going to say at least go out and vote, and then we'll deal with it afterwards.
Yes, remember that there were an awful lot of veterans who didn't come home to ensure that you had that right to vote.
Indeed.
So,
Okay, we're at the 45-minute mark, Bob, not the 30, believe it or not. We went over, I think, holy moly. Okay, well, don't forget to
hit the like button. That's right.
Please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button, because we need it. And by the way, how about buying us a coffee, because we got to pay the bills here. So we don't go on a big thing about give us your financial support, but we do need some help because it does cost us money to run the program, and we do it real cheaply. So a couple of coffees will help.
As cheap as we possibly can.
Yeah, that doesn't mean we're cheap.
We could be tricked.
All right, until next week, Bob.
You betcha.
Good fun. Stay safe.
And you too. Have fun.
We'll work on it. Cheers.